house now. I go in back and scrub down those garbage cans.
Okay, and we're in. I feel like I've said that at the beginning of every episode of this I've done so far. Like maybe it's my catchphrase.
We're in.
Maybe I need to like come up with something like more t-shirtable that I can say at the start.
What's up, guys?
What's up, nation? Today I'm talking to Imogen Trusselle, comedian, producer, writer, author of internet listicles.
I do love listicles.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Had a good day. Pretty cool. Had a skateboarding session in the morning.
No way.
And then some guy came up to me and was like, "Hey, you got a skateboard? Can you do any tricks?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. Can't do a single
That
trick."
guy was Tony Hawk.
Yeah, I know. And I decked him, and I was like, "Don't try me again."
Beautiful. So you wanted to talk about Lady Bird, the amazing
film,
Greta
yeah.
Gerwig film from 2017.
Oh yeah, 2017. What a good year. Yeah, fantastic year. That was the year I worked in a ramen restaurant and I peeled 3,000 eggs.
Oh, so I was thinking of it more in like, a great year for film or whatever.
No, great year
like,
for Imogen Trusselle peeling eggs.
Yeah. Is that your record?
Yeah. So I used to turn up, and I mean, I feel like I'm always talking about these fucking eggs. But I used to turn up every morning. There'd be a huge vat of eggs, and then they'd make me peel them each morning. But I counted it up, and I must have peeled over 3,000 eggs that summer, and that's why it's the best year ever. That and Lady Bird.
That's so cool. Like, so your whole job was kitchen porter stuff, just peeling eggs. My
job was waitress, but I like always put myself forward to do the eggs because it was really relaxing. It's like the repetitive flow.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
get into the flow of it. So I got an actual pro at peeling eggs now.
Did you get to like listen to a podcast or music or something?
No, I literally just zoned out. No thoughts, just egg peeling.
That's the dream.
It really was.
And for anyone who's listening to this podcast while peeling eggs, keep going.
Yeah, please.
You can get through that. You can get through that pile. So Lady Bird is a coming-of-age film about a young woman who's in Sacramento, California in the early 2000s at a Catholic school who dreams of leaving and becoming sort of someone else and supposedly about like getting away. But the way that Greta Gerwig phrased it is like it's a film about wanting to leave home that's secretly a love letter to that place, and a film about a daughter that's secretly about the mother. Which, I'm not going to try and top that as a sort of summary. Does that sound
That sounds
right
about
to
right.
you?
And also there's a love story that's secretly about friendship.
Yes.
Which is beautiful. I love it. I think it's a perfect film.
Yeah. So why is it that when I spoke to you, I said, this is Love and Content, by the way. Forgot to mention, this is a podcast in which I speak to artists and creators about pieces of work that mean a lot to them. Why is it that you wanted to talk about this film specifically?
It's my favourite film, my favourite piece of media ever made. Actually, you asked me, I didn't even need to think about it. Like, I was like,
nice.
Instantly. Lady Bird is what I want to talk about. I think, when I saw it the first time, I liked it a lot. I really enjoyed it. But I didn't watch it again until last summer. And I got made redundant over COVID lockdown. And then it was not on Netflix very long. So I went and I was just scrolling through Netflix one day before bed. And I watched Lady Bird, and I was like, this film is so good, and just meant I just found it really comforting that I went to bed after watching it and then woke up and immediately watched it again. I just thought it was so fantastic. It's really, I found a lot of comfort in it. And then they took it off Netflix the following week, so I'd really caught it in a really short window.
Dang.
So I instantly went on eBay and bought a DVD copy, and I think I watched it 20 times over 2020.
You bought a DVD?
Yeah, retro.
I don't think I've ever loved a film enough to buy a DVD in the last 8 years.
Yeah, I just loved it so much, and I was so bored of trying to find it and buffer it every time I wanted to watch it, which was at least once a week. Because the first time I'd watched it again was early August, late July, and I'd watched it 20 times that year, so it was very frequent. I just think it had a lot of emotion in it that really hit home, and I found it. And the music I think is so lovely in it. It's just I found it very, very comforting.
Yes, definitely. It has such a cool sort of. I love that it's an early 2000s period piece. The only kind of period piece that is not obnoxious is the one that is autobiographical and isn't really meant to be a period piece. It just so happens to take place in that time, like, I don't know, mid-90s or like American Graffiti. So there's a really lovely sort of like early 2000s soundtrack that isn't, look at us, look at all this music we're playing from this era, which...
And it's not the cool music either.
Exactly.
It's like what the teenagers are actually listening to. Like, there's a bit when Lady Bird's in the car with her dad and they're listening to Alanis Morissette.
Yes,
which,
exactly.
Who is like, I love that album so much, Drag a Little Pill. I think, that's another one where I really latched onto it one summer and just listened to it loads. I would have picked that if I hadn't picked Lady Bird.
Yeah.
But Lady Bird's like, can you believe that she wrote this song in a day? And the dad's like, yeah, I believe it. I believe it, because it's not a good song.
And there's a bit when she and her best friend Beanie Feldstein, they're in the car and they've just like they've had some emotional like a relationship drama and they're crying in the car and the song they're listening to is Dave Matthews, which is so great. It's so unpretentious. It's like,
and what's so nice is because what's his face, pointy face, looks like a ferret,
Timothy Chalamet.
Him, that song comes on again later when they're on the way to prom and they obviously think they're so cool and he's like, ugh, I hate this song, and Lady Bird's like, no, I love this song. Yeah. Fuck you guys. I'm gonna go hang out with my actual best friends.
Which is great because like there is a really cool like emotional coding to that because like it is really admitting how embarrassing it is to like sincerely like something. Yeah. Because like the fact that it was the 2000s then, but the film was made in the 2010s, we look back on Dave Matthews Band and there's this whole thing of like, oh, it's super lame and anyone who likes it is a dick. So the fact that like they chose that as like something that everyone kind of automatically codes their brain to be like, I'm too cool for this, for them to go like, no, you know what, this is nice and it means a lot to me.
And I think that like kind of fits into the whole, I mean, that's the whole narrative, isn't it, that she is trying to be really cool and trying to be more than she actually is, and that at the end she's just like, actually I'm just gonna like what I like, I'm gonna do what I want to do. And that's such like a good moment because that's when she goes back to her best friends, and it's like, I don't care about how I look or how I see you. I'm just going to do what is me. It's nice.
Really lovely. And there's the bit when she goes to her friend's house and Julie is crying and she goes to him and she's like, what's wrong? It's like, nothing's wrong. Some people just aren't built happy, which is absolute gut punch. And it's like kind of what a big part of this movie is, which is the idea that like sort of people contain multitudes and there's like, it's obviously about this one person and everything we're seeing is filtered through her experience, but we get the idea that everyone here is living a vivid life that's just as real as hers.
Yeah, because I mean, it's because like Ladybird's so caught up in her own world, she doesn't even think about, like, she doesn't think about anything she says. That's why she like was constantly hurting her mum, but actually she's also hurting Julie, but you don't see any of the effects of her words until, you know, afterwards when really well done film.
Which is just what it's like to be a teenager.
Yeah, teenagers fucking suck. They say stuff. They don't even think about anything they're saying.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I was saying to you just before we recorded that, like, when I first watched this, I was conscious of it being a very good film, but I did not have a good time watching it because it was such a hard watch for me because I was 19 and I watched it and it hit so hard for me, like, because it was so recent for me being that, like, soon to graduate teenager who's just kind of sucks and like says weird lies for no reason and it's just like, you're just like, why are you doing this to yourself? And then I rewatched it just the other week and absolutely beautiful. Did you find it hard when you watched it the first time? Do you remember your first viewing experience?
I saw it in the cinema and I liked it a lot. I really enjoyed it at the time, but it definitely didn't have that same kind of I didn't have enough distance to look back on my, as you were saying, my teenage years to kind of recognise the how nostalgic it makes me feel. I think that's why I find comfort in it, because it's quite nostalgic. So I watched it that one time and was like, this is a good film. Really enjoyed that. Didn't really think about it again. And then when I came back to it, I was like...
Yeah, so this is one of the things I was thinking about, is like, it's really nice and sensitive in the way that it's a film about young people and like adolescence that doesn't do what 90% of films about and TV shows about teenagers do, which is either is completely irreverent and makes everything ridiculous and you're fucking an apple pie because you're so horny, not to name any names.
That was you can name yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's like, I genuinely I'm disgusted with myself for making this reference, but like there's a Family Guy bit where it's like they're talking about Dawson's Creek, and it's like, these are the most important times of our lives.
Oh my god.
Nothing that can't be solved by throwing a few rocks at a lake, though. Which is the thing. So like it's either completely irreverent or it's just melodrama that neither one really speaks to what it's actually like. And like, I don't know, the poster is really nice. I was looking at it the other day, and it's a religious poster. Like it's coded like a religious painting, and she's in profile, and it's got this really nice gothic font to sort of, I was trying to think, what is it trying to say? And I guess like deliver on the idea that for this person, this time in her life is actually very profound and meaningful, you know, and like it's not necessarily a thing that we get a lot with teen movies. So my thought was like, is it really a film for young people, or is it for people who are kind of looking back on their youth? Because yeah, you and I said the same thing.
I definitely think it's about looking back on your youth. I think it gets a lot of stuff that you don't notice you're doing as a teenager really well, and you don't notice, because it's like when you're so close to something you don't notice something. It's once you've had a bit of distance from it. I mean, I don't know about the religion stuff. I guess that's more of Greta Gerwig's personal life, right? Did she go to...
Yeah, exactly, because it was a Catholic school that she went to, and a Catholic school in the film. But I do find that, because, she really kind of rejects the whole religion thing. She rejects religion. You know, she's like kind of actually... That's that funny bit when she's in this classroom and they're talking about, I can't remember her name, Sister something, the nice old woman. Yeah.
And Saoirse Ronan's like, yeah, she's a cunt. And Beanie Feldstein's like, no, we like her. What are you saying? Why are you saying this? Because we like her. That's how like selling out completely. But there's nice, because at the end she comes back as like a grown woman. She's just had her stomach pumped. But she goes to church and she has this like nice epiphany moment, and she's like, oh, okay, no, I've been a dick. I've kind of like tried to sell myself out. And then she goes out and calls her mum. Which is like, I don't know.
Yeah, so it's like, it's not about necessarily religion, but it's about kind of this big like force in her life that she had spent so long sort of rejecting, and then she kind of engages with it, and it's just profound in that it reminds her of the things that are important to her. I don't know, it's like, the way that the posters are, she's sort of like a saint, I don't know, like a sort of icon of like youth, but also that doesn't mean being a hero. It kind of means being a dick as well. You know? Yeah,
she's kind of an anti-hero, because like you're rooting for her, but you're also like, oh, stop doing this stuff. You're selling yourself out, and it's so annoying.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this as well. It's like the idea of a flawed protagonist. Obviously, it's like it's been doing big numbers for a while in like film and television and stuff. But specifically in comedy, I was thinking about how there's now sort of an interest in not just painting yourself as flawed, but kind of like as a garbage fire. You know?
Yeah, that's a big trend at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Of being like a very, just like your life being a big ball of like whatever chaos, you know?
I guess it's quite easy to find comedy in so much chaos. Like, if you've got so much shit going on, it's really easy to find a punchline. And it's a lot more interesting than watching someone being like, yeah, I have a perfect life. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a joke about something I've just seen on the street. Like, it's a lot more, you can do a lot more with it, I reckon.
Just a big ball of dirt, you know?
Yeah, just absolute shite.
What was that? You wrote a Succubus article that was something like affirmations that won't resonate because...
I'm a disgusting little worm.
Because I'm a disgusting little worm, that was it, yeah.
Yeah, that's because, I mean, when I'm in my lower points, I genuinely feel like a worm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was a really fun one to write, actually.
But it's like, it's nice that like that sort of metaphor is it, isn't it? It's not just like, oh, I'm like Don Draper, I'm a piece of shit and I drink whiskey and brood. It's like, it's funny. You're like, oh, I'm a little worm creature. Yeah. I'm a possum who like just rifles through a dumpster and stuff.
Absolutely filthy rat.
But like, maybe part of that is the idea of like, when it's autobiography, there's so much more of an impulse to like paint this person, whoever it is, if it's like, I guess, I don't know, Fleabag, I May Destroy You, Girls, where it's like, or even like Woody Allen stuff, where he's like, well, of course I'm a piece of shit, you know? And there's no sort of attempt to make this person like flawed but likable or whatever. When you're writing about someone who is in a lot of ways yourself, you're kind of like, yeah, he's a piece of shit. Look at me, I'm a piece of shit. I don't need to prove that or qualify that in any way. Anyone would agree with that.
It's a lot easier to look inside and find the like bad parts about yourself than it is to like make up this imaginary person and try and envisage them with bad qualities. Because I mean, everyone thinks it's unique to themselves, but people analyze themselves so much every day. All you're doing is thinking about yourself, and I mean, maybe I'm coming across as a massive narcissist, but everyone knows.
Well, you think about yourself.
Yeah, I know.
You are a focal point through which your experiences are filtered.
It's crazy.
Wow, what an egomaniac.
Yeah. But it's a lot easier to notice every bad thing that you do than it is to like, you know, because people are so caught up in their own worlds that, wow, I'm really saying it like it is. You get so caught up in your own world that you don't actually notice other people's flaws as much.
Yeah.
So it's harder to write other people's flaws.
Yeah. So, and I think the layer of distance that Greta Gerwig had to Lady Bird, where a lot of people like assumed that it was autobiographical. In a Vulture article, they said a lot of people assume it's a roman à clef, which I had no idea. Yeah, I had to Google it. Apparently, it's an autobiography or like a true account where just the names are changed. And Greta Gerwig kept saying like she hates it when people call it that because she's like, because I worked really hard writing it, you know. It's all made up, you know, and yeah, so the person Lady Bird is not herself, and she was saying I was not as headstrong and like courageous as this person, and I very much followed the rules. So that's possibly part of how she's able to like write her with a bit more sensitivity, because she's not really writing about herself, even though people might think that she is. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, I can imagine how like kind of frustrating it could be when you spent ages writing on something and someone's like, oh, it's easy for you because you just wrote basically what happened to you, and you're like, no, fuck off, leave me alone.
Well, I mean, hard. What's your stand-up like? Is there a lot of personal experience in there?
Yeah, I'm very personal, I think. Because I have no sense of boundaries.
Sure.
Anything that happens to me is basically up for content. But I've really had to like consider recently what kind of stuff is okay for me to say on stage, because a lot of stuff I talk about, like family, I hadn't really considered that anything I say also relates to my siblings and my parents. I was like, oh, this is something that has only happened to me. I'm the only person affected by any of this. So I've had recently just like what is fair for me to say on stage to like not protect people's identities, but for them to not feel like their personal life is being invaded.
That you're kind of exploiting the pain of like not just yourself but other people as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to consider it a lot more carefully, whereas before I would just go up and say whatever I wanted, which I think is quite selfish of me.
Is it cathartic?
Oh yeah, big time. I remember the first set I did about my dad who has dementia. I came off stage. I'd never really spoken about it to most of my mates. I came off stage being like, oh, that feels great. It was like free therapy, and I'd forced everyone else to go through it with me. I love being personal on stage.
Exactly, but like, I don't know, is there a risk of like, when you do something that's so like emotionally raw and like cathartic and talking about your own pain and whatever in such a naked way, that like, how much of that is the comedy and how much of that is kind of getting a reaction out of people by just saying something really dramatic, you know?
That's a good point. Am I just doing it for a reaction?
Yeah.
No, my coping mechanism has always been to comedy. Anything that's happened to me, I've always tried to. I've actually struggled with sincerity, so it's a lot easier to make a joke out of something. And actually, I think the first few times I was doing it, it was a lot more for me. It was more of like the audience were a sounding board for me to kind of process it. And I felt, because the first set I did about it, I didn't write a lot of it. It was largely improvised, and it was the first time I'd ever spoken about it. I just told a few stories, so it kind of felt like I was just it was like I was processing it on stage, just saying anything that came through my mind and not really filtering it, which can be a downfall sometimes, because I think some absolute shite.
Sure, exactly. And then and there's a question of like how much of this was actually like for the form of stand-up to like make people laugh, and how much of it was just you know, Did I make people uncomfortable and like?
Yeah, I often
Was that all
make
right,
people.
you know?
I often make people uncomfortable, and I have to really. I find myself recently, now that I'm actually trying to put some work into doing stand up instead of just going up and doing fucking whatever I wanted.
Sure.
I'm finding myself putting a lot more work into making people feel comfortable when I'm talking about stuff like that. And I feel like, I mean, it's really hard with stuff like that because I feel so comfortable with it. And I wouldn't be talking about it on stage if I didn't.
Yeah.
But it's people feeling uncomfortable on your behalf, and you're like, why? Because I'm fine. Look at me, I'm fine. Don't feel bad. But I mean, everything. I always go in with the mindset that, like, now recently, I'm going with the mindset that I'm doing it for the audience. If they're not finding it funny, I'll just stop. I'll just pivot and do some other thing, because the audience is the most important thing when you're doing comedy. Like, if they're not laughing, you're not having a good time. So what's the point?
Is your stuff like fairly improvisational, or is it all like heavily written, or what?
So I want to move more into more improvised stuff. The most fun I have is when I've not written something, because I really like playing around in the room and I like playing with the audience.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do some writing because I like writing.
Yeah.
But I find that harder to like write a set. And I often find I'll go start doing my set and then get kind of like back out a bit and get a bit scared and just start just doing random shit in the room.
Which I guess, gives you a lot more flexibility to test the waters, see what's working with the audience and what's not.
Yeah, and like it's often days when I'm not feeling as confident. And
Yeah.
I'll do a bit. The joke doesn't really land, and I'll immediately start doing something else. So I'm trying to get better at just like sticking to my guns.
But I guess it's also like antithetical to like building a tight 5 or a tight 10, isn't it? If you keep changing what you're doing every time.
Yeah, that's what I find quite hard, because obviously a lot of a good way to progress in the comedy world is through competitions.
Yeah.
But those are so catered to a really well written, or at least the things I've seen, a really well written set and a really tight 5. Which I don't think will really ever be my style. Like I don't think I'm ever going to be joke.
Yeah.
Like everyone laughing constantly. Like and actively people
I'm
not
not going to
laughing.
be one of those stand-ups where it just makes everyone laugh.
Yeah.
Like it's a crutch is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. They don't need to do that. That's cheap. They're selling out. No, I think I'm more about getting a vibe in the room rather than people being like, that was a really good joke that you said. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. I guess like that's more of the performer side of you than the writer side. Which like, I remember because I did a little bit of stand-up when we were at university, and I like just came at it from a writing thing. It's like I only want to do this as a writing exercise to like read out my own jokes and stuff. Everything I did was so like just completely written. It was blocks of text, and like I worked hard to make it feel authentic and like natural and to have a flow to it. But it was always like I would say it over and over again, like memorize it and stuff, and have it perfectly committed. Which terrible if anyone ever decided to heckle me or something, because then I would just be completely sunk.
Yeah. I suppose that's like when you start out. I mean, I'm still really new, so it's not like I'm super experienced. But when you start out, it's like easier and you feel safer once you've got like a whole set, and you don't need to like worry about deviating away from it, and it goes how it goes. But it's the feeling once you've got a bit more like confidence on stage, you feel a lot more relaxed. So you don't need to worry so much about the writing, I guess.
I mean, when you book other people, because you handle the bookings for the 99 Club, which is a comedy club in London. What do you look for people who you see them and they have like a really immaculate set, or do you think this person has a great vibe, or?
So yeah, I do some of the bookings. I don't do all of the bookings, but yeah, usually it's I like their vibe. I'm definitely more of a vibe feeler outer. I think I always have been. Like I always prefer comedians who have more of like a presence to them on stage, and they're like playing around, rather than being like they're a really good joke writer. They've written a good setup and a good punchline. I don't find that as interesting. I think because there are more of those kind of comedians. I feel like I've seen like a reasonable amount of comedy now that I find personality so much more interesting. So if I see someone on stage and they've got a really unique persona, I'll be like, okay, yeah, we definitely need to get them.
And I guess in the broader sort of comedy world, especially in the UK, it's kind of moving towards like personalities and stuff as comedians. Like it's all panel shows, isn't it? And it's all these people who have like just a brilliant comic persona who can like sort of just like riff a joke on anything, rather than someone. Sometimes they have people on who have like just come out with like, Jeremy, what do you think of this news story? And then they look down at like the bit under their panel and they go like, well, you know, the government is a lot like a bag of cabbages. You're gonna have some mouldy ones, and Matt Hancock's in there somewhere.
That was verbatim from Mock the Week.
Yeah, so yeah, it is, I guess, more of a shift to that sort of style of comedy.
Yeah, and I guess with TV, it's a lot. There's a lot more shows, and like people are trying to get a good way that people write TV or get into writing TV is that they'll become a stand-up first, and they'll become like known as like a name or a presence or whatever, and then they'll get their own TV show off that. Which is like, I think, a good example of it's all about the person rather than like actually talent, you know.
But again, all those people, like when they get their own BBC show or whatever, especially if it's fiction, it's autobiographical, they're always like, look at this piece of shit. Look at this awkward human being. Look at this idiot floundering around in their life. And I don't know, a lot of that like isn't great because of that. Because I think like they're so ready to jump on the bandwagon of everyone laugh at me, what an idiot I am and stuff. And it kind of sounds like, I'm like, no, you're not an idiot.
Yeah, I think I do worry sometimes with the big, obviously it's great, a big shift around the more we talk about mental health and stuff.
Yeah.
But there's a big trend on social media to really put yourself down like a lot, to be like, oh yeah, this is I do this because I'm shit, I'm a piece of shit. And it's like, no, just don't say that, because then the more you say it, the more it and I've been guilty of this. Like, it's really easy to make jokes when you feel bad about yourself, but it really the more you say it, the more it becomes true, and the more you actually believe it.
Is it possible to like kind of draw a line between the version of yourself that you paint in your stand-up acts and like the way that you see yourself?
Yeah, and like I felt a bit of a shift after lockdown in the way that I perform, because I felt like I really grew up a lot over the year and a half that we were stuck inside, because I was unemployed for a lot of it.
Nice.
And had only time with myself.
They were just sending you eggs to peel. And
yeah,
like send to the
exactly. I
restaurant.
know. Got furloughed from the eggs.
Dang.
Yeah, I spent a lot of my time just like sitting with myself and just having to, by force, become more confident and comfortable in my skin. So now I go on stage and I talk about this stuff, I feel like a lot more distant from it, because that's not actually how I feel about myself. Which I think is interesting. And like, I think I used to feel quite restless and like anxious within myself. So a lot of my performing, it would be quite chaotic, and none of it made sense.
Right.
And I would just like, I think sometimes you could see me panic on stage.
Right.
Which like I don't do so much anymore. I mean, I've not had as much opportunities to.
So if you have like maybe a more robust sense of self, it's
yeah,
a lot easier to like create a personality or something, or like draw out an exaggerated version of your character if you know what your character is.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly it. Like, I know who I am now and I feel comfortable with myself, so now I can make those jokes about mental health or whatever, and it not reflect so much on my actual sense of being.
Is it also kind of numbing to do like some very like emotionally raw material over and over again? Like, you talk about something that is actually like very significant to you and stuff, and then but you go to clubs all over London, you say the same joke over and over again. It's sort of, does that feel weird to you?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, it's kind of, because obviously I talk a lot about my dad. He's in a care home. He's, yeah, as I said, got dementia. But I already, it's been 2 or 3 years since he first showed signs of it. So already in that time, I'd kind of numbed to it. Like, it's just become a part of my life. So the first few times I was saying it, I would feel like, oh, okay, I can actually feel the emotional effect of talking about it on stage. But after a while, yeah, I can a bit numb to it anymore. That's what I was saying earlier. Like, when I talk about it on stage, I don't even consider that it's kind of like a painful topic.
Yeah.
Or like there's potential raw emotion there, because it's not present for me.
It's just a set.
It's just a set that I've written that I think is funny. So I don't, yeah. I guess I do feel numb to it, but that's not because I've done it so much. That's just because I've done a lot of work to process it. I don't feel upset about it anymore. And
is it nice or like not nice to have that feeling of like, oh, I feel comfortable joking about this, you know? Or at least it shows people that you're comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I really like it. I always prefer people that are joking about stuff that's actually real to them. And I love talking about it. I would talk about it for ages, but people are like, shut up. Stop talking about your dementia, Dad, again.
Well, I mean, people, I guess in stand-up, people really respond to when you, like, take something very heavy that's happened to you, and then you make a joke about it, and it's like a tension release valve, and they're like, oh, thank God. Oh, it's okay to laugh at this, you know?
Yeah, I always really prefer those kind of situations because, like, oh, thank God you're letting me laugh about this because I feel so stressed that you've mentioned it. So I do get it from their perspective, but yeah.
There's a lot of, like, sensitivity to that, and I suppose, I don't know if it's a new thing, like, stand-up leaning much, much more to the autobiographical, which I guess, I feel like, I don't know enough about this to really have much confidence in it, but I feel like in earlier decades and stuff, a lot more of it was about, like, was Rodney Dangerfield or like or Mitch Hedberg or even like Sacha Baron Cohen doing like characters or whatever, and it's just jokes, you know. It's not, there's very little that's personal about it, and then like say like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, she's great and we feel such a connection to that character because like everyone else in that circuit is joking about how much they hate their wives or something, or like making jokes about being fat, and she just comes on and like talks about her life. Yeah. Which is, it feels very immediate.
For sure, but sometimes it does feel like stand-up asks so much from you a lot these days. Like you have to really give part of yourself to get... Actually, that's not true. Not everyone has to do that, but a lot of the comedians who go far is because they've given a part of themselves to the audience, which feels like quite a big ask. I mean, it's fine for me because I've got no sense of boundaries. But for most people...
How do you mean by giving a part of yourself to the audience?
Well, it's like you have to show the audience who you are as a person. And you have to, like, be more personal or, like...
or create a person and then show that to them.
That's true. That's also true. I guess, I don't really know how people do that. Create a whole new persona. I'm always really impressed with people who can do that. It's quite a skill.
Yeah, when you talk to them in like after a show and you're like, oh, you're nothing like that person who you were on stage.
Yeah, people who are like dickheads on stage, you're like, I hate you, and they're like the loveliest person off stage. You're like, how have you done this? There must be a part of you that sucks, but no.
Or the people who are really nice on stage, and it turns out they're absolute dickheads.
Yeah, that one's more common.
It's a lot easier because they're practicing not being a dickhead in real life as well, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
But is it kind of lonely, stand-up as an art form? Because every other sort of major art form is so much more, in some way, collaborative. I don't know, like, obviously film, no matter what, like, auteur theory would have you believe, you know, there is always a collaborative nature to it. Greta Gerwig said that. She said in an interview, she said something like, she doesn't want to, like, clone herself and have someone, she wants it to be call and response. What did she say? She said something really good. Did I have it written down here? She said, I don't want an echo, I want an answer, which I think is really nice. And then, whatever else it is, you have, like, editors or, like, people who give their thoughts, but the stand-up is just you, isn't it?
Yeah, what a question. Is stand-up lonely? I've never found it lonely. I find it very sociable because you forget, you're on stage for, however long you're doing, 5, 10, half an hour, whatever. You're on stage on your own for that much, but then you get off stage and there are so many other comedians around that like you hang out with. Like if you're doing your own hour show, but I can see I've not done that yet. I've only done half hour. No, 20 minutes. Anyway, not important. I can see how that's quite lonely, but most nights comedians will be performing on a bill with other comics, and they'll be backstage in the green room with other comics just chatting before their set. I find it very sociable, actually, the scene, as wanky as that is to say.
But there's something, I don't know, when you make something that's like completely out on its own and you're not working with anyone else on it, so if it's good, you're celebrating that alone, and if it's bad, you're commiserating that alone.
Yeah, I see your point, but I think, it's different for different comedians, I think, but a lot of comedians, I think, would want it to involve the audience. So actually, you're with a lot of people, unless you're with like 3 people in the audience, but you're there with the audience. If you've done it well, I think, you're not on your own on stage, you're like...
That's fair, it's not necessarily collaborative. It is kind of collaborative in that way.
Yeah, because you've got to work with the audience to like help them laugh, and then they can sometimes give you stuff that gets, I don't know, a good response. Yeah, I mean, the audience is the collaborator, as wanky as that is to say.
And is that all right? Does that suck, or is that like good?
Depends on the audience.
Yeah, exactly. Like, obviously, you have comedians who, like, some of them, when their jokes don't land, they get like really hostile and they go like, "Fuck you, that's a good joke." It's like, okay.
sorry, I didn't laugh. Yeah, I mean, it can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. I've definitely been like annoyed that a joke didn't land when you really believe in it, but it doesn't land. That's
because it's like, it's not necessarily people you trust, you know. It's not like when I do like I write like plays and stuff, and like if I send them to someone, I always like curate a list of like, who do I trust, whose opinion do I really value and stuff. So then if I send it to them and they're like, this is not good or this needs work, I can't just brush it off because I really trust their opinion. But the audience is just some guy.
Yeah, just some guy called Pete in the audience.
Yeah,
who
this
doesn't know what he's talking about.
Fucking chucklehead didn't
Yeah.
think my joke was funny. He didn't earn. He just paid £7 entry. That's his qualification.
And sometimes that's quite nice because it's sometimes comforting to be like, oh, the audience just didn't know what they were talking about. It's not the audience for me. But I think there's a danger in that where you like can completely disconnect yourself from the audience and think that they don't know anything and you know everything, and that's kind of can be quite arrogant to believe that like you are perfect. Every joke you write is great.
Yeah. Is that a matter of like doing as many shows as you can? You know, like.
Yeah, I mean, not so much that you burn out. I think a lot of comedians are like, you have to be gigging every single night, which I think is a lot and tiring and not good for anyone's mental health or state of being. But I think the more you do it, I guess, I mean, I've not done hundreds, but like I feel like I've done enough to get an idea of who might like my stuff and who might not, and when to know whether it's me being shit or the audience just not getting my vibe.
Yeah, right, because, you know, you write a joke and it doesn't get a laugh once, then you can put that down to the audience not getting it. If it doesn't get a laugh every time, you're like, okay, maybe I actually do have some reconsidering to do.
Probably should cut that bit about the eggs, it's not really landing.
No, the egg bit will always be great.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you, like, work with other comics? Do you get sort of advice from them? Do you give advice in that sort of way?
Yeah, all the time. That's why I think it's not a very lonely thing, because you're constantly asking other comedians for advice. Like me and Ted Milligan, that's most of the stuff we talk about is each other's sets and how we can work on our stuff and how we can improve as comedians, which can be boring. Like obviously we talk about other stuff sometimes, but yeah, it's nice to like work with other people on your set and you help their set, and it's just it's quite nice.
You think, is there an alright community in London, or have you not really been long enough here to get an idea?
Well, what was frustrating is I was just about to get into it, and then lockdown happened. So I've started doing a few in London. I'm meeting more people, which is nice, and there's a really nice community. But there's also a load of people who can be quite cliquey, I think.
Right.
But yeah, I guess I've not done enough to know enough about who's good, who's bad, who's the cool kids, who are the lame kids, who's in the band. You know, you
can start your own cool kid group. You know?
Well, I'm planning to. I'm going to try and set up a night. Me and Ted Milligan and my friend Lucilla.
Oh, lovely.
We're going to hopefully set up a night in the next couple of months, which will be like a big community thing.
And you run a night in Bristol at the moment, don't you?
Yes. Oh, I love it. It's so fun. It's called Party, and it's at the Cube Cinema in Bristol. I run it with Pravanya Pillay. It's for trans, non-binary, and female performers. And it's just fun. Like we called it Party because we wanted it to be like a good, fun party time. And afterwards we DJ, so people stick around, have a drink. And yeah, we just play around and mess around on stage, and there's not really any pressure for it to be like good. It's just people want to have fun. That's what we want to do.
Is that somewhere where you like test new material, or do you?
So yeah, I mean, me and Pravanya, we try and have like a different party theme each month. So we write a different like narrative, I guess, for that. And we always try and make sure we have one person who's never done it before doing a spot, and then Pravanya will go through their set with them to help them like feel confident before they go on stage, which is a really nice.
That is really lovely.
Yeah.
And that's like, I think, really countering the idea that stand-up is lonely. If you've got like a really lovely community of people, then it absolutely doesn't have to be. Yeah,
and I think that's what I always like so much about stand-up. It's just like it doesn't have to be this big competitive, scary thing. It's people just trying to get up on stage and make other people laugh, and you can help each other with that, and that doesn't have to be like a competition. And it's just nice to have the community, isn't it?
I guess it depends where you are. You know, you can either have places that are kind of cliquey, and then places where you can actually get some like whatever sort of tenderness and like actual inviting sort of understanding. I was thinking about this a little bit with Lady Bird when I was watching it to steer the ship back a little bit. I was just thinking about how it's a comedy, which I mean, it's almost like it's a very sad comedy, and then one that could very easily make you cry, but a comedy nonetheless. And I was thinking that we have a lot of films in recent memory have been like this, and it almost seems like there's a shift in like there's been a bit of a shift in like comedy movies and like to something a little bit more understanding and a little bit more tender with it. Like I was thinking Booksmart, 8th Grade, Into the Spider-Verse, The Big Sick, Hunt for the Wilder People. Basically, just before I saw you, I looked up like what are people saying on like listicles of like top 10 comedy movies of the last few years, and all of those ones were on there, and like there are very, very few like out and out like laugh a minute comedies like we had before. Like I think Game Night showed up once or twice, and that was literally it, you know.
That was a good film.
It
it's
was
like
good,
Naked Gun is all slapstick, which I think is perfect. I think slapstick is the highest form of comedy.
Oh sure.
But it's like it's like why your friends are the funniest people. Someone said this recently. Your friends are the funniest people in the world to you because you have that shared sense of shared what's it called? Things that you know, shared. What is that word?
I wish you guys could see the hand movements that Imogen is doing right now to try and coax her brain.
You have shared points of reference.
Nice.
You have shared points of reference, and so it's easier to get a laugh out of that because once you know someone, you know what makes them laugh. And that's why I think these tender films are funny, because you are more invested in the characters, so you can relate to them more, and that's comedy.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Like I mean, and they're just kind of lovely and beautiful and like moving and stuff. So like they're funny, but they kind of there's something more there which actually feels quite nice to like not just be watching. I don't know. The Hangover is. I like it fine. I haven't seen it in many years and stuff, but I think
it's pretty fine.
The only thing you get out of it was like that was funny. I liked it when the Chinese man got out of the car and he was naked or something, but it doesn't really leave you with all that much. Whereas like. Yeah, I think Olivia Wilde, when she was talking about Booksmart, people were saying like you shouldn't do it like this. You can't make a comedy movie like beautiful and stuff because it detracts from the laughs. When like you say, it really, I don't think it does, because if anything, you have so much more of a love for these characters and you're so much more invested in them that like you find them funny. It's like they're your friends. Yeah.
For sure. I love Booksmart. It's like one of my favourite films.
I loved it so much.
It was so good. Beanie Feldstein, I think, is a real talent.
Yeah, she's fantastic. Can we talk about the cast of Lady Bird, by the way?
Oh my gosh, it's such a wicked cast.
That's like every good young actor they got in that movie.
Yeah, wasn't it? Timothée Chalamet and then
Lucas Hedges.
Lucas Hedges, who I love. He's so good. Phenomenal. And what's his name? The dad.
Oh, Tracy something.
Tracy Lett.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Laurie Metcalf, who was the mum. Oh, I think she played that perfectly.
Yeah, it was really fantastic. Again, you know, like she's flawed in a way that like it would be so easy for her to be like sort of the put upon mother or something in that relationship, and she is that, but she kind of sucks, you know, like they have a difficult relationship and she can be very mean and critical. Yeah,
she's quite sharp with Lady Bird. Yeah. I always, the thing that runs through my head the most from this film is the bit towards the end, they're trying to get Lady Bird's dress for prom, and Laurie Metcalf is just like, oh, I want you to be the very best version of yourself that you can be. And Lady Bird's like, what if this is the best version? And the mum's just like, come on. It's not, you know that.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Such like a gut punch. And I always think about, I just want to be the best version of myself, and I'm going to get there one day. It's not there yet, but one day I will get there. That's, like my mantra each day.
I love a comedy film that just gut punches.
Yeah. And not in a slapstick way. In a gut punch way.
Not in the way that it's funny, because they double over and they're like, oh my god.
Yeah, my tummy hurts.
It's really nice. Yeah, it was such a beautiful film, and she talks about how the aesthetic of the film, she wanted to make it a Xerox of like the way it was meant to be colored was to look like a Xerox of a photo, to have this sort of like tinge of like sort of bright coloring to it. I was thinking about this just because she was talking with Barry Jenkins, who did Moonlight, which was a good year for film, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was.
They had La La Land that year, which
delightful film.
I will defend because I love that movie, and so many other people didn't like it, and it really upset me.
I just think it's a lovely film. It's not like saying loads and loads, but I enjoyed watching it.
I get really upset whenever like I watch a movie, like especially in the cinema or like with people, and it like hits me really hard, and I'm just like completely like enthralled by it, and I love it so much, and then we turn off the movie and I go like, oh, I loved that, and then the next person goes like, that was crap.
I hate that. Everyone should have the same experience as me for everything.
Yes, exactly. It's just, you feel really naked when like you've let yourself enjoy something in a like completely like uncritical way, like you've turned off that part of your brain. You're just like, that just gave me a really nice experience. And like for someone, when someone says something like, oh, that was like, I didn't like that, or like this was bad with the acting or whatever, it's like you're a little peach and someone's just poking you and like bruising you, you know?
Shut the fuck up, you don't know what you're talking about. It was perfect.
I remember I saw Contact, which is this Robert Zemeckis film about like space travel and like making contact with aliens, which is actually about faith. And I remember loving it so much, and I watched it with my family, and then like when we turned it off, I was like, oh, that was amazing. And then my family hated it. They were like, that was so stupid. And I remember I yelled, I said something really stupid like, you ain't never seen a film before.
Oh, that's such like a, how old were you?
Oh, this was like last year.
I was gonna say that's such like a teenage. You don't understand me.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely regressed to this teenage state of like you're all Phyllisy. You don't understand anything about films or my experience. I got sidetracked. My point was, like so Moonlight as well, like because they actually had the same colorist on their film doing the grading, and the way that you can like add a veneer of like distance to something to make it like to make people understand that it is a film, because she was talking, Greta Gerwig was talking about this with Frances Ha, and she was saying that the black and white in that sort of works because it reminds someone that they're watching a film, you know.
Also cheaper, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. You can just pour that chocolate sauce down the drain and tell people it was blood.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But I guess that's like, I don't know, it's cool that like she wasn't going for like a grainy sort of realism. There was definitely like an idea of like, you're watching this film, it's overtly written, you know, it's got like very, very quick dialogue, all the characters are witty, and like it has a lot of like, it has a clear, it's sort of like, it's structured. And I'm not gonna like try and pretend to you that this is real life. So I'm adding this like extra layer to it to sort of distance you from it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's done beautifully. It's like a beautiful film in its own right. Aside from like anything it says, it's shot beautifully. It looks like someone's taken photos of like Sacramento in 2000s, and then she's just put that on screen. Yeah, and I don't think it like. I don't know, you were saying it would like distances you a bit. Did you say that?
Well, just, remind you that you're watching a film.
Yeah, I mean, I actually kind of think the opposite. Because every time I watch it, I get so invested in it that I forget that I'm watching a film, because I'm so invested in the characters, and I think I'm so emotionally invested that like, I just get really...
Yeah, definitely. No, yeah, you definitely get drawn into it, absolutely. In a very sort of filmy way. It's like, it's nice that you can overcome that barrier and be like, no, like even if this is like very overtly constructed, it's so emotionally powerful that it draws me into like, it really speaks to that experience, you know. It's like a lot of films try to like, if something is trying to be like real life, you know, whatever they have, you know, very improvised dialogue and shaky cam and like very muted colors or whatever, it's like, yeah, it's real. It's like, Yeah, but like it doesn't really. Real is just an experience, isn't it? It's like.
I guess it's kind of like because it's a snapshot of her time.
Yeah.
Like a memory.
Yes.
It's very much like cause you always remember things more perfectly than they were. That's probably something in that.
No, she definitely she said like literally that in the interviews. Like
nice.
That's you've hit the nail on the head. You and Greta on the same mind.
The one-on-one.
She was saying how like you remember things as like more beautiful than they were, and that's like how she like decided to give it this sort of tinge to it, which like it's amazing how she's able to convey that experience so effectively, and like it's not this is a slice of life, this is exactly what it's like to live through this moment. It's more like no, this is the exact feeling of living this time.
Yeah, I guess also like when Lady Bird first drives through Sacramento, and it's like those lovely shots of it. It's just, and she's finally seeing it, and it's the way it's shot makes it look so beautiful. And actually, I'm not sure Sacramento is is the most beautiful place, which I guess feeds more into what she was saying in the interview.
You'll understand that more when you get older. And you move to New York, and you're like, no, Sacramento was beautiful. Yeah, God, what an ending.
I know, it's beautiful, so well done,
And speaking of endings, perfectly segueing, I think that's a great place to end this discussion. Imogen, thank you so much for coming in and chatting about Lady Bird. Where can we see you doing stuff?
So you can see me at Party at the Cube Cinema in Bristol every month. Just check the website and I'll see you there. Follow me on social media, at Imogen T on Twitter, at Imogen TR on Instagram. I'll be posting about any gigs I'm doing, and anything I write, basically, or produce, or anything I do ever.
Brilliant. We'll be dropping some links in the description so you can get on that. Until next time, guys, thank you very much for listening, and see you soon.